I hope I do justice to the knowledge of this. Hats off to you for keeping so much information. And if not, that's also a very fine thing. So that these talks are falling on the same in the same month as the month of cervical cancer awareness and prevention. So let's start. I will be giving a small introductory talk, and after that we will pursue our cases. Everybody, I hope you can see the screen.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, who's this great man? You all know. Yeah. So Dr. John Nicholas Papanopoulos. What is the name of his wife who's standing behind him? Andrew Mahi Mavrogeni. So this scientist couple was responsible for giving birth to cytopathology as the subspecialty of pathology. They got their untiring efforts in this field have brought them a lot of awards and accolades, but the highest honor came in when the scientific community at last decided that cervico-vaginal cytology would be named as the pap smear. That was the best thing that could have happened to remember him. Now, with the revolutionary discovery of the pap smear, a massive cytology screening program was launched in Jefferson County in 1956. It was a model program and it lasted for 16 long years. And when the statistics of this program showed that the death rate due to cancer cervix has dropped from 25 to 10 per lakh women, the WHO announced that cancer cervix is preventable. Now, preventable but not yet prevented is the reality today. You saw this same graph when Radhika Madam projected, and you know the incidences are variable, but they are pretty high in the Asian continent and the African continent. And in India, they say that every 5 minutes a woman dies of cervical cancer. You also know that this is caused by which virus? Yes, human papilloma. It's a huge family. More than 200 viruses have been discovered. Some of them are high-risk viruses, rest of them. And these viruses, they have affinity. The high-risk viruses particularly, and some of the low-risk viruses, they have affinity for the skin in and around the genitalia, and that is why we get those infections in this area. And these are responsible for 3 types of diseases: the warts, the dysplasia or the precancers, and invasive cancers. Now, what about the pathogenesis? It's very clear, and with understanding as we are understanding more and more about the pathogenesis of cervical cancer, now we know that there are 2 major categories according to the Bethesda system: the low-grade cells and the high-grade cells. Now, Chinmay, can you tell me what happens in low-grade cells quickly and in the high-grade cell?
In low-grade cell, it was previously called as the CIN1, cervical intraepithelial neoplasia 1, and its cell is the CIN2 and CIN3. The moderate and severe dysplasias are categorized into its cells.
Yes, no, but you haven't told me what is the episomal growth and what is the integration of the virus into the host genome. That's the major difference. So the low-grade lesions are just productive lesions. Pardon? Low-grade lesions are just productive lesions where the viral particles, they are multiplying within the cytoplasm of the mature squamous cells using the machinery of the cytoplasm, and then they break up there, they multiply, they assemble again, all the proteins they assemble back again. I'm showing you a picture over here, and then all these viral particles, they are shed out. But in case of the high-grade lesions, and which is particularly caused by which viruses, you name them in one breath.
16, 18, 6, 8, 16, 18.
Yeah. Now, what happens here? There is integration of the HPV DNA into the host chromosome, deregulated expression of the HPV E6 and E7, and interactions with the cellular regulatory proteins. And there is disruption of the cell cycle, integration of the virus into the host genome, which transform them into the immortal cells. And then here you directly get a high-grade lesion. So high-grade lesions, remember, they can arise de novo. They do not have to go through the phases of CIN1, CIN2, CIN3, which was our previous understanding. There is a subset of high-grade lesions which are arising de novo. And what is the difference? How do you know these have come from de novo lesions and these have come from the long-standing lesions? Any differences clinically? These women in whom it arises de novo, they are generally younger women, and the lesion develops within 1 or 2 years of the infection. And women who are developing it over a period of 10 to 15 years, they generally are of 55 to 60 years of age. But these you can find in women as young as 20s, in their late 20s and early 30s. Now, the Bethesda system, how many classifications of Bethesda system have come up till now?
3 classifications.
Okay, you can just add one more. There have been 4 revisions of that. But basically,
2016.
No, the first one was in
1980.
Yes, second one was in
1991.
91.
Yes.
2001.
Yes, perfectly correct. Now, the Bethesda system has made it very loud and clear that a pap smear report is an interpretation of all the findings that you are seeing, and it contributes to a diagnosis, but it itself is not a diagnosis. So previously, in the previous classifications, they used to call it, the category was diagnosis. What is our diagnosis? But this was stopped because they were also using terms like CIN1, 2, and 3, and mild dysplasia, moderate dysplasia for histopathologic tissue. So when it was used in cytology also, it was mistaken as if cytologic diagnosis is a final diagnosis. So, and that started having caused a lot of problems to the clinicians in the management of the patient because it was not truly correct. So then it came, the revisions of the classification made it very clear that the cytology report is an interpretation and it contributes to a diagnosis, and it brought the world together with one cytologic voice. Now, this is the standardized reporting framework. Now, Deepmala, I think Deepmala is a little. Shahnaz, can you read out quickly the 5 categories that you're seeing, the main headings?
Specimen type, specimen adequacy, general categorization, interpretation or result, and notes.
Yes, so we will be going into each of these categories as we move with our cases, and each case I will tell you how you're going to report it, and you'll have to tell me what are the words that you're going to put in under each category as we move. So we'll not talk much on this over here. You all know what is the transformation zone, what is the squamocolumnar junction. Now, in this picture, you can see the pink endocervical mucosa, and the pale squamous mucosa, and this junction is the squamocolumnar junction. And what is the transformation zone, Shahnaz?
The transformation zone is the space between the old squamocolumnar junction and the newly formed squamocolumnar junction after the metaplasia has happened.
And what keeps changing, the squamocolumnar junction or the transformation zone?
Squamocolumnar junction keeps changing, ma'am.
Yes, and so the TZ also.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, if you understand, this is because of multiple causes like a change in the pH environment of the vagina, multiple deliveries, infections. There is ectopy, that is eversion of the endocervical mucosa onto the portion of the cervix, and then squamocolumnar junction starts moving outside onto the portion of the cervix. But ultimately, this has to heal. So there are 2 methods of healing. Have you heard of ascending repair and descending repair? when the squamous epithelium from the postio starts replacing the glandular, healing the glandular epithelium, that is known as the ascending repair. And when the reserve cells that are present beneath the endocervical epithelium start changing and they become metaplastic and form a squamous epithelium, that is known as the descending repair. And then you get these islands of cells. These are the metaplastic islands. And then ultimately the whole glandular area is replaced by mature squamous epithelium. And then in the end stage, you are not able to identify whether this epithelium is a mature squamous epithelium which has come, this mature epithelium has come from immature metaplasia, which has undergone in that glandular area, or it was the original epithelium which was present in the onto the portion of the cervix. But in histopathology, you can identify, not clinically. In histopathology, you can identify because glands are present beneath the squamous epithelium. It's okay. Now, a cervical smear adequately collected from the squamocolumnar junction and the transformation zone, well fixed and well stained, it's still a very simple, economical, and convenient method for detection of the crime committed by the culprit virus. Now, there are a number of devices that are available. What are these called as? Just name them.
These are endocervical brushes, ma'am. And
This is
as
brush.
spatula is also shown here.
Yes, this is the iris spatula. What are these? One of them is inside the canal. These are known as the Zale spatulas. These are plastic spatulas. This is a wooden spatula. This is a brush, and this is just a cotton-tipped applicator. So a variety of devices have come so that we can precisely sample the transformation zone and the squamocolumnar junction. Now, no matter how nicely designed is the collection device, it is always impossible to standardize the application of the material that you have collected from the transformation zone and the squamocolumnar junction onto the slide. And as a result of this, in a conventional pap smear, you have uneven distribution of cells, thick and thin areas, and there is a lot of inflammation, mucus, and blood that comes along with the spatula. And in the hurry and worry of doing immediate fixation. Now, what do you understand by immediate fixation? Immediate wet fixation. That is the term that we use.
Ma'am,
Immediately
putting
putting the
it
slides into the bag fix, ma'am.
So, what is immediate?
before drying of the smear, ma'am.
Yes, while it is still wet, you have to put it in the alcohol. What is the concentration of the alcohol?
95% ethyl alcohol, ma'am.
Ethyl alcohol. So sometimes in that hurry and worry, you try to spill the costly alcohol, and what in the end you get is air drying artifacts on the slide. And that is why it is said that sometimes searching for abnormal cells is like searching for a needle in the haystack, because there are so many components that are present in the slide. So now to our rescue, we have got the liquid-based preparations that are coming out. You have a cervix brush over here, which snugly fits the endocervical canal and collects the cells from the transformation zone and the squamocolumnar junction. You have to, how many times you have to rotate the brush?
5 times, ma'am.
5 times. And I will just highlight, tell you emphatically that the rotation has to be very gentle and with slight pressure, and you do not scrape the cells deliberately, because this branch is called part of exfoliative cytology. The cells that have been already exfoliated onto the surface of the cervix, that we collect and we study. But if you try to deliberately scrape them, then you're going to get false information from the material that you have collected. And I know that all this information is relevant to the gynecologist who's collecting the smear, but we also should know so that we can tell them when we see such scrapes and deep artifacts in the slide. And I'm telling you this because I collect the pap smears myself, and I also do the colposcopy. Now, after you have collected, the next step is what? You break the head of the brush. You all must have seen these pictures on the net, and in your seminars, you must have prepared these talks and label the vial and send it to the laboratory. What is the biggest advantage? Tell me first 2 advantages of this vial. What does it contain?
Fixative, ma'am. Fixative
Which
solution.
fixative? What is the concentration of the fixative? Is it dilute or is it as concentrated as the jar you saw? It's a very dilute fixative. 50%. Methanol, ethanol. Now you can see on the vial it's Shopath. Shopath uses ethanol. Okay. And what is the other advantage of the vial? So you're prefixing
All
the cells.
contents are transferred into the BD vial as compared to the conventional smear.
Okay, cell harvesting is there. The cells can remain in the vial as they are, as fresh, for a month if it is kept out of the refrigerator, and even up to 6 months if it is kept in the refrigerator. So you have the sample with you, nicely preserved sample with you for this longer time. And the biggest advantage, the third and the most important advantage, whenever you want, you can go in for reflex HPV DNA testing. So if you feel there are abnormal cells, or you have cells like LSIL or SQS, ASCH, and if you feel that you need to do HPV DNA testing, the same vial can be used. You don't have to call the patient all over again to take a second sample. Okay, so collect, drop, and send with 3 advantages, 3 steps and 3 advantages. That is what you have to remember. Now, what happens in the laboratory? The cell enrichment is done using the density gradient reagent. What is this DG reagent? What happens with this reagent? I thought you all have read about liquid-based preparations and the processing of Surpath, which is now there in many centers. I leave that for you to read, okay? Then a very nice clean cell pellet is formed with the help of the DG reagent. And then this is, there are settling chambers on top of catanically charged glass slides. And there are different types of setup that we have. You can process 2 samples, 4 samples. And in this station, this is a fully automated station where you can process 48 samples at a go. And even the staining is fully automated. Now, the difference is very stark. Here you can see this is a conventional smear with so much of cellular overlap. And this is a small diameter. What is the diameter in Shopath?
13 millimeter, ma'am, in Shopath.
Yes, it is 13 millimeter diameter. And how much is the diameter in thin prep?
20 millimeters, ma'am, 20.
Yeah, so here you have a slide of thin prep where you have a 20 millimeter diameter where the cells are spread in a monolayer. Now, is there something which is better than the other? Anything you have read? And what is the principle of thin prep? You didn't read the procedures?
The obscuring artifacts are better hidden in the Shopath as compared to thin prep, ma'am.
Okay, and which is more monolayer?
Thin prep.
Thin prep is monolayer.
Thin
You
prep.
have a very nice single cell distribution. Why?
Because of the area of distribution of cells is more as compared to BD Shopath, ma'am.
No, is it using any membrane filtration? It is based on the principle of suction of the cells onto a membrane, and then that membrane is transferred onto the glass slide, and then it is stained, it's dissolved, and it is stained. Whereas here, the cells are settling on their own onto the slide. So there is slight overlap of cells in Shopath, but there is no overlap because each pore of the filter membrane, there is one cell sitting there. So there is equidistance amongst each of the cells, and it is a monolayer preparation. Now we'll go to our first case. I think this basic information, with this, I think we should go to the first case. Now, you have seen the cases, you have seen the slides?
Yes,
All of
ma'am.
you? Yeah. So, Shilpa, you'll be with me for this case. Are you okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Come on, read the history.
53-years-old woman complains of irregular menstrual cycles.
Now, what do you think are the causes of irregular menstrual cycles at this stage?
Ma'am, it's important is it is a perimenopausal age group. And the most important cause is this. Then there are the fibroids, uterine fibroids are there, cervical lesions are there, endometrial.
What do you understand by irregular menstrual cycles?
Ma'am, having a cycle of more than 34 days,
Mhm.
or irregularity in the,
So right over here, you should know that the LMP is not constant. It is variable. The duration of bleeding is also variable, and this generally happens in dysfunctional uterine bleeding. Broadly, we will just keep it as dysfunctional uterine bleeding as the main cause, and the cause for this DUB commonly at this age is the perimenopausal age group when they are trying to settle down with the menopause. Now, what are these cells?
and these are the superficial and the intermediate squamous cells.
Mhm.
Ma'am,
Just somebody has opened the annotation request. Okay, so
Please ignore it. Dr. Kamal, please ignore the annotation request.
yeah, I have closed that window. Now, the ones which are having a slight orangish cytoplasm, what are those cells?
ma'am, these are superficial squamous cells. These are polygonal well defined and measuring 45 to 50 micrometer, with pignotic nucleus measuring 5 to 6 microns. And the other ones are the intermediate squamous cells measuring 35 to 40 micrometer, with nucleus slightly larger than the superficial squamous cells, that is up to 7 to 8 micrometer.
Okay, very well said about all the dimensions, so that I don't have to go into those details. But I'm slightly interested here in knowing why this color. They should have been eosinophilic, isn't it? They are keratinized cells. They should be pink cells, superficial cells. Here you are having them as orange color. So what takes up an orange stain?
Ma'am, keratinization.
Not exactly. It will take, of course, orange color, but this is not that dense keratinization.
Ma'am, maybe these are because of parakaryotic.
No, see, these are glycogen-filled cells, and glycogen takes a golden orangish color. Now, sometimes the colors are they keep varying because of different pH that each laboratory has, the different staining patterns they have, and the timings each laboratory uses. So, what here I want to highlight are these intermediate squamous cells, and of course, some of the superficial squamous cells. They are still showing that golden color, and they are laden with glycogen. But basically, you get glycogen in which type of cell? Intermediate squamous cells. Yes. What is the other component? What are these? Something you can see.
Ma'am, these are lactobacilli.
So, this is the lactobacillary flora. Is it normal?
Normal flora of it.
Yes. What is the function of these lactobacilli?
Ma'am, to maintain the pH.
How they maintain the pH? How they maintain the pH? The glycogen which is present in the intermediate cells undergoes lysis because of these bacteria, and that is how the pH is maintained. What is the normal pH of the vagina?
Ma'am, it's 6.9.
It is acidic or alkaline?
Ma'am, it is acidic.
It is acidic. So it's up to 6, 4 to 5 to 6. That is the pH. Now what are these cells? Here you had a mixture of cells. Now these are very clear cut. What are these?
Ma'am, these are again superficial and intermediate cells.
No, I'm pointing out to one cell.
Ma'am, this is the intermediate squamous.
Intermediate squamous cell. What has happened to the margin of this cell?
And it's folding of cytoplasm.
So what are these cells known as?
Metaplastics.
No. And how
Navicular cells.
Radicular cells.
Sorry.
Navicular
cells.
cells. And they are particularly found in
Pregnancy.
Pregnancy.
In pregnancy.
And why they become navicular-like?
Because of glycogen.
Which hormone is affecting them?
Progesterone.
Because of progesterone.
Yes, so long-term progesteronic stimulation will give rise to glycogen-laden cells, and when abundant glycogen is collecting inside them, they try to accommodate that much glycogen, and their margins they get folded, and you have such navicular cells. Now another feature.
Dr.
Yeah.
Can you use a laser pointer, please? Students want that.
Okay. Yeah, right. Now, what is the other feature that you are seeing here? Are these cells distributed in a single or less? This is a conventional smear, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So when I'm showing you the PPT, I have a mixture of pictures from conventional as well as the LBC. So this is a conventional smear. So there is a lot of overlapping and crowding of these cells. When does this happen? It's very typical of perimenopause. So what is also it is called as crowded
Groups.
menopause.
Crowded celling.
Pardon?
Sorry, crowded cell groups.
Now what are you seeing this? I have given a little homework when we were doing trial. What are you seeing inside the cytoplasm?
Ma'am, these are the keratohyalin granules.
Yes. And which cells are these? Again. So whenever we are talking about the number or the type of cells, you need to say predominantly intermediate squamous cells are seen, and few of them are superficial. So this is a superficial cell. This has a larger nucleus. And what is the color of the cytoplasm? Of course, again, as I said, it will vary.
Orange, green, greenish.
So the color of cytoplasm of intermediate cells is known as, in technical terms, cyanophilic. Both blue-green. When for the superficial cells, what is the color?
Eosinophilic.
Eosinophilic or pink. What is the nucleus of the superficial cells? It's dense, pyknotic, very tiny. So every time you're not going to measure it, but you have to remember for intermediate squamous cells, you have to have a very clear idea about the size of the nucleus, because it marks it is a benchmark for all these squamous intraepithelial lesions. You're going to compare the size of the abnormal cells with the size of the normal intermediate cell nucleus. So what is the size of a normal intermediate cell nucleus?
Ma'am, 35 to 40 microns. With the size, it is the size of the intermediate cell with the 7 to 8 micron of nucleus.
Almost of the size of an RBC.
RBC.
So that you have to keep in mind. Now here you're seeing a lot of bacteria again, lactobacilli. Here you can see some of the long lactobacilli. And here can you see what has happened to the cytoplasm? And you're seeing some bodies over here.
Candida.
These are the candida bodies. Okay. Now what has happened to the cytoplasm over here? It is disintegrating. You cannot see the cell boundaries sharply in all of them. So what is this? What is the term used when the cells are breaking down?
Cytolysis.
Cytolysis. And when does this happen?
In the late luteal phases, ma'am, where
Yes, second half of the
intermediate cells
cycle.
start disintegrating.
Yes, so sometimes when you take a smear in the luteal phase, what you get are simply the cells are lysing out. The cytoplasm is breaking down, and you can see a lot of bare nuclei, and you have just the granular background of the cytoplasm that is remaining there, and abundant lactobacilli. So such a smear is called a lytic smear. In that case, what is the significance of this? You should not mistake the bare nuclei for the nuclei of neoplastic cells. So you should know that this phenomena occurs physiologically. Now, why are you seeing Candida? Does Candida have any preference of a particular vaginal pH? Okay, we'll come to that a little later. Now, this is just to show you very nice superficial squamous cells, pink eosinophilic pycnotic nucleus, and as compared to that, these intermediate squamous cells. When do you have a predominance of superficial cells?
When these are in the reproductive age group.
But which part of the cycle, menstrual cycle?
The ovulation, ma'am.
Pardon?
Around the ovulation, ma'am.
Yes, at the time of ovulation. So the estrogen causes maturation of the cells. Progesterone prevents the maturation of the cells. So in the first half of the cycle, you're going to get a lot of mature cells. Now, previously, as you know, that cytology was used for calculating the maturation index, knowing the time of ovulation in infertility cases. But now we have a lot of hormonal evaluation with a lot of and hormonal assays. So this method is outdated. But still, we need to know these basic features, because sometimes you do come across conditions like if it is estrogen secreting tumor in the ovary in a woman who's more than 60 plus, and you're going to see a lot of superficial squamous cells. Then you know that something abnormal, more estrogen hormones are being secreted in her body. And then likewise, you can investigate. Now, what are these cells?
Ma'am, these are the
Conventional smear.
yes, ma'am. One conventional smear showing the endocervical cells in a honeycomb pattern.
Yes, and
When it's lipid-based cytology, again showing endocervical cells in columnar pattern, and this is the cartwheel appearance. So
perfect. Now, what are the different other patterns that you see? What is this pattern called?
it's a strip.
Yes, other word for this?
Depends.
Picket fence, ma'am.
Picket fences, picket fence.
Here you are having a combination of both picket fence at the periphery and an end-on appearance in the center where you are getting honeycomb. What are these cells? Do you get any metaplasias in these cells? You have tubal metaplasia.
Yes.
When you get ciliated cells, here you can see a lot of cilia.
Yes.
What is this phenomenon known as? There is a tuft of cilia without a columnar cell. Have you read about it? What is ciliocyte of?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, cilias get detached from the cytoplasm and they get stacked with each other.
So what is the significance of that? Previously, there was a lot of emphasis on this. They start resembling parasites and some ova and many other artifacts. People start suspecting things, but recently there's no significance attached to this. But you do get this phenomenon many times. Now, what are these cells? They are laden with. They are full of secretions. Yes. So these are the goblet cell type of change. This is another type of metaplasia which you can see, and this happens in which phase of the cycle? The cells are very
secretory. In the second half.
secretory phase. So the cells are very plump and juicy, and the cytoplasm is stretched with the glycogen that is filled in that, glucopolysaccharides that have been filled in it. Now, what is this? What are these cells? They're very tiny. They are neither parabasal cells, superficial cells. You can see very nicely over here. What are they? Now, this is
They're looking like inflammatory cells, ma'am.
yeah, because we have not magnified them. So they are not inflammatory cells, they are reserve cells. This is a very unusual phenomenon, and you get this generally in epithelium that are very thin, and they are present beneath the glandular, endocervical glandular epithelium. They're very small, even smaller than the basal cells, or they resemble the basal cells. They have a very high NC ratio, and sometimes they look triangular, and they are generally present in such concentrated patterns. Now, what is the significance of this? You have a host of differential diagnosis of this. They can resemble histiocytes, they can resemble basal cells, and you can confuse them with small cell high-grade lesion, and so you should know that how the reserve cells look, and they do come in this pattern in a smear. Now, before we see how we are slide these features in a slide, we'll see our first slide. So this is our slide number 1. Now, what are these cells?
And these are endometrial cells.
Why you want to call them endometrial?
Ma'am, because of their 3D appearance, and they become as a ball like.
They're a ball of cells. But were you do you think in this woman with a DUB type of history, this is justified? We can get this? And what would you call it?
It will be called as exodus, ma'am.
Exodus.
Hyperchromatic crowded group.
It can also, these are the differential diagnosis, like an exodus, hyperchromatic crowded group of cells, a 3-dimensional cell group. It could be anything, right from endocervical glandular cells to endometrial cells to a HCG of abnormal cells. So here you're getting a cluster of cell wall. Now, by and large in this field, what are all these cells?
Ma'am, these are navicular cells.
This one particularly is an navicular. Yeah, rest of them are they intermediate or they are superficial, parabasal? What are they?
Intermediate.
Predominantly, yeah, intermediate.
Intermediate.
Yes. So as we said that the patient is undergoing a crowded type of phase of menopause where you have plenty. Now see the difference that you see in a conventional smear and in a LBC smear. Each cell is separated out. So that effect that you classically get in a conventional smear of a crowded smear pattern, that is not being seen here. They are pretty much separated from each other and separated by so many spaces over here. Now, what are these again? Very small.
And these are basal cells.
No, basal cells.
These are looking columnar cells, ma'am.
Yeah, I think that cytoplasmic head has been broken and they are almost becoming end-on. So they are basically glandular cells, but they are so tiny that they could be endometrial cells. Okay, now we go to another cell group. What are these?
Columnar cells.
Yeah, they have here you can see more amount of cytoplasm. And what are these? In this circle, you have these end-on appearance of the same cells, and here you have this columnar.
Appearance, endocervical cells.
What are these cells?
And these are columnar endocervical cells.
Now you have seen so many groups of granular cells. How would you try to report this? See, this is all folded cytoplasm. Now, if it comes to we'll come back to this slide. How are you going to report this? What was the specimen type?
Ma'am,
Because I'm showing you, if we talk on the digital slide, it's a LBC
liquid based.
preparation. That's what you have. Is the specimen adequate?
Yes, ma'am. Adequate for evaluation.
The definition of adequacy.
Ma'am, first of all, we look for the cellularity.
Hmm.
In case of LCB, 5,000 squamous cells are there, and for the conventional smear, there are 8,000 to 12,000 cells. And in case of atrophic smears, there are at least 2,000 cells must be there. And if there are few abnormal cells present in the pap smear, that is considered as adequate smear. Then, ma'am, look for the endocervical and cells are
Yes.
and
So you have correctly said all the criteria. Chinmay, so what will we write in over here? Before that, is it essential to have the cells to call it adequate smear?
None. For considering adequacy, the presence or absence of glandular cells is not taken into consideration.
So this is a very big paradigm change after LBC has come and the Bethesda system has come that it is not essential. But if they are present, you must mention them in this category. So what will you write over here? Specimen adequacy?
Satisfactory.
Adequate for evaluation, transformation zone component present.
Yes, correct. If it is not present, do you mention even that?
Yes.
Yes, you will mention even that. Now, in the general categorization, this category, what are you going to write? What is this?
for intraepithelial lesion of malignancy. NIL.
NIL. See, whatever you write from top to bottom in any of these categories, it is mandatory. Whether an intraepithelial lesion is present or not. Why?
The basic aim of doing the pap smear is to exclude any epithelial abnormality, and that too specifically presence or absence of HSIL. So,
Yes. So the very purpose of pap smear is it's a screening test for precancerous lesions. So if no lesion is there, you must mention that. What comes under other category?
the presence of endometrial cells in age group more than 45 years.
So now the smear that we patient was 53 years old. What will you write over here?
Endometrial cells present in more than 45 years of age. You have to mention
Now,
the
do you
same.
think it is out of phase bleeding?
Out of phase is, ma'am, when endometrial cells are 12 days of LMP, ma'am.
Yes. But with the history of DUB, when she doesn't know when she started bleeding, how long the bleeding lasted, and sometimes 12 days, sometimes 15 days, then what do you write? You simply mention that with because of her signs and symptoms of long-term bleeding and the presence of endometrial cells in this category, you will write endometrial granular cells are present consistent with her signs and symptoms of dysfunctional uterine bleeding. That is what you mention. We know that she's more than 45 years of age. Epithelial abnormality, if it is there, you will mention. We have told that that is an ILM smear. And now, what is this category for? Then we have already written everything over here. Now, what to do?
To describe the findings, ma'am.
If you want to go towards describing in details, if there is a lesion, you can describe. Otherwise, sometimes people prefer this is optional as it is written in bracket. So in the interpretation and result also, you can mention NILM and everything. And here it's important to mention in the general categorization the other. What is this section for? Additional notes or comments? Do you want to put any comments in this for this particular patient?
Ma'am, tubal metaplasia. We have seen slide of tubal metaplasia here.
Yes.